Hey everyone, this is Angela from Bake It With Love, and today we're working on my chocolate decadence cake. If you have chocolate lovers in the house, they're going to totally appreciate this one. These are the chocolate shards that are going to go on top. This is chocolate cake with chocolate buttercream and chocolate ganache on the top that these will be placed into when we're all done. So I took 2 cups of chocolate, and when I melt my chocolate in the microwave, I do it at half power in 30-second increments. So that's what I did with these until they were smooth enough to stir and spread like this. Make sure that you stir your chocolate between each heating in the microwave. That way you don't burn your chocolate, and that way you know also right when it's ready to spread. So what I did is I melted my chocolate, gave it a few seconds to kind of cool down, and I put my baking sheet, lined it with parchment paper, and then I'm using a fondant mat here for texture that I put 1/3 of my melted chocolate onto this, 2/3 is on the parchment paper on the other side, and so I'm just going to spread this until it's nice and even and pretty smooth over the top of the fondant mat. We're going to do the same sort of thing with the smooth fondant that's on the parchment paper here, starting from the center and working our ways out so that we have a nice smooth layer of our chocolate on the parchment paper. And then we will refrigerate these until they set up. When we bring them back out, we'll give them a few seconds to kind of soften just a little bit so they don't crack too badly when we cut into them. The one on the fondant mat pops off really easily. I didn't use anything to line that fondant mat. It's just straight on there because when you flip the chocolate over, and it kind of pops right off of that plastic mat. So it's easy to do, and it adds a lot to your cakes and makes them look really spectacular. So if you haven't done this, do try it. It's not hard at all. As you can see here, I am getting ready to pop the fondant off pop the chocolate off the fondant. I let this refrigerate for actually quite a while I was working on baking my cake and making the buttercream. So it was in the refrigerator actually for a couple of hours because I did like 3 batches of chocolate cake. Just hang in there, I'll load them up here soon. And then my other chocolate piece that's on the parchment paper is harder to work with, but it's still really easy to do. You can see here I'm cutting it by pressing it. This is a pretty sharp little knife. Make sure that you do use a sharp knife, not a dull one. And that's the hard way to do it. But if you just set it on and press it like that, it works beautifully. You can also, right here, drag it across and cut your lines. Just make whatever shapes you want. You'll have a few pieces that inevitably they will break, but you'll have quite a few good shards to work with when you're all done. And then set that back in the refrigerator until you're ready to use it. And here we're going to level our 2 chocolate cake layers. I'm just starting wherever the high point is and taking that off. And set that aside because I'm sure if you like me, you have kids in the house that are going to love getting into the cake early. So same thing with the other half. We're just going to take that peak off. If you didn't like when I did my white cake that's earlier in my videos here, I used the bake even strips from Wilton. They work beautifully. There's also a homemade method. I'll share that at another time. But you can use any large round tip for putting your middle layer of buttercream in. And what I do is I twist and I push my piping bag down into the tip while I fill it up so it doesn't make a mess in my cup that I like to use to hold my piping bags if I'm not holding it by hand. I'm going to fill my piping bag up about 2/3, but what you're looking for is the amount that you would normally put in the middle layer if you were to just spread it in there. So just enough to do that, because that's all I'm using this piping tip for today, is just to do that middle layer to fill my cake. So, and I'm not the neatest person with my frosting, so I'm sure if you're doing this at home you might feel like, like you're not that neat about it, so don't worry, because neither am I. And you can go along and clean it up a little bit if you like, but what I'm looking for is a nice evenness in my layer so that when I put my second layer of cake on, it's really going to be nice and level. So I hold my tip about a 1/2 inch from the first layer of cake, and when I took the excess off of these, I tipped them up on their side and kind of brushed them off so there's not a lot of crumbs there. Hopefully the less crumbs you have to work with, the easier it is. So just go around in a swirl circle, you see, like I'm going. You have to start and stop over like that. Don't worry about it, because the taste of this chocolate buttercream is phenomenal, or whatever you use for your filling. If you're using like a raspberry or a cherry filling or some kind of fruit filling, like a jam, you'd want to go ahead and just do the outside with the circle and to hold everything in your dam. So, but this works for your filling, and I'm just going along and kind of just evening out a few spots. And remember, if it If it's on the outside a bit of the circle that your bottom layer is, it's not a big deal because you're going to frost around the outsides too. And then set your second layer on, and we're going to frost the top now and go around the sides. So I just put a big dollop on the top and spread outward towards the sides. You see there, if I have a lot of crumbs that I'm gathering on my spatula, I like to scrape it off. There's a bowl on the side of me that I will scrape it off so that my crumbs aren't throughout my frosting. Whoop, there I go. I got enough on there that I wanted to clean it off. It's always easier to work with clean tools. If you start to get a lot of crumbs, go ahead and clean it off. Now I'm going to be piping some borders on around the base of this cake, and then along the edge that I'm going to add chocolate ganache and let it drip over the sides. So I'm not being too particular about how even my frosting is, and that's a lucky thing for me because, like I said, I'm not that perfect with it yet. I do the best I can, but because I'm just a hobby baker, these aren't going anywhere, but you know, family will have a slice and then that's it. So it's just for us to enjoy and share with you here. We share it with friends. I send them home with my my former neighbor who comes over and helps us at our new house all the time. He loves it. So I take my scraper, I go around the sides here. I'm going to use my offset spatula and just kind of that ridge that you see around the edges as I clean up around the sides of the cake at the top here. I'll pull that in towards the center to get it as even as I can, because I don't want my ganache like absolutely pouring off because I didn't get it fairly level on the top anyway. So I will link in the buttercream recipe that I'm using and the ganache recipe as well. Like I said, the chocolate shards are just made with chocolate chips. I used semi-sweet chocolate chips. That is all it was to it. 2 cups, and just melt it in the microwave like I said. So I'm practicing my border there just a little bit before I start on it. I'm reversing the swirl direction, and I'm having to hit the cake because I want it around that bottom edge because I didn't use a cake board at all on this one. I just wanted it on my glass there. So it's a little bit harder for me to show you this one, but I will zoom in here in a second and we'll get a closer view, I promise. So just go around the edge of the cake. You're reversing the direction that you're going each time with these and just kind of letting a tail form and then pulling away. And reverse it the direction. You swirl downward and then upward around the bottom of the cake as you go. And just continue with that until the entire bottom edge of the cake has been covered. So you gotta love these borders because whenever you're a little messy around the bottom of the cake or on the edge, you can kind of cover it up. Plus, it, you know, like the chocolate shards, it's a really easy, simple step to kind of make your cake look a little bit better. So I'm using one of my large star tips here for the top, and if you see, I'm trying to make my stars a little bit spacing between them so that when I add the chocolate ganache, and my chocolate ganache, I cool it down a little bit. So technically it's a chocolate spread. But I'm trying to leave a bit of a gap so that when I add my chocolate on the top there, I can push it between those gaps and let it drip down the cake. So we're going to add some of the chocolate ganache on top here, and that recipe will be linked in here too, as well as a link down below in the information. And it's easy to make just a snap too, just like the chocolate shards. And it is wonderful. My daughter is a chocolate fanatic, just like her dad. And I just really had a hard time keeping their fingers out of this cake while I was making it. Like little spots that you see edited out of here, it's because I had people hovering, waiting to get in this cake. Anyway, so I poured my ganache in the top, and I'm just using my spoon here to kind of push it towards the center so that it reaches all the stars all the way around the cake. And then I'm adding a little bit more right between the edges of the stars so that I can kind of push it through those little gaps. And then I will add some more on my spoon on the outer edge of the cake between the stars too, to help it along with that drip effect over the edge of the cake. So keep doing that until you've got enough drip effect on your cake. See there, I'm adding some more, and then I like to, if you see the center there of the cake, I like to swirl with the back of my spoon a little bit more on the top layer of the ganache so that I have a pretty smooth little swirled effect there in the center. There we go. Real quick, real easy. I've got all the drips that I want, and I'm going to place my chocolate shards on the top at the back half of the cake so that you can see it's actually not facing you yet. I will turn it. So some of the shards have the texture from sitting on the fondant mat, and some of the shards are smooth. If you don't have a fondant mat, you can also take I'll do this in another video, but you can take your parchment paper, crumple it up, and then smooth it back out so that you'll have a textured effect for contrast here between your shards. So just place your shards randomly, big ones, smaller ones up front, or whatever you want to do until you have enough shards on there that you like the appearance of the cake. So we'll see here, I'm almost done. I'm going to keep adding until I like the appearance of the cake too. And yeah, my fingertips are all over those. If I had thought about it, I would have used gloves. I did wash my hands in cold water before doing that. It didn't really help that much. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, please remember to give it a big thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe before you leave because we have lots of great stuff coming. As always, we are so glad to have you here with us. Thanks so much for being here, and we will see you again next time.